I've been using the Samsung Flip 3 and the Fold 3 since they were released, and I realized that they aren't designed for the same type of user. But after weeks of real life use, I realized that they aren't all that similar. They offer very different benefits and have different limitations. I'm gonna break it down for you. I'm gonna talk about what I liked and what I didn't like, so I can give you a complete perspective of these two phones and help you decide if one of them is a good fit for you. Starting out, we know that both phones fold, and before I get to the real life implications of that, I just want to address a concern that I had about both. It has to do with the build quality of the phone and in particular the hinge. So as soon as I started playing with both, I immediately stopped worrying about the hinge. Both phones are extremely well made and the hinges are very sturdy, and then somehow at the same time, they're really smooth to operate. The Flip 3 seems like it requires a little less force to open. It's also smaller and easier to handle, and you can open it with just one hand. The Fold 3 is kind of a beast of a phone, and you'll definitely need both hands to get it open, which is okay because it has a much more usable outer display, which I'll get to in a minute. Now, as far as portability, the Flip is much lighter and much smaller than the Fold, and when you open it up, it's just a little bit bigger than the closed Fold. And the weight difference is actually meaningful. Like a lot of times when I compare tablets, one of them might be like 10 or 15% heavier than the other one, but I always mention that most of the time it's in a bag with a case, and I don't really notice the difference. But with a phone, when it's in my pocket or in my hand, I definitely notice the extra size and the weight of the Fold. It's essentially like having two phones back to back. Like not exactly two, but maybe like 1.5. So you really need some serious benefits in order to put up with that, and luckily there are plenty. Which brings me to the displays, and I'm actually gonna start out with the cover displays because they immediately create a very meaningful distinction between the two phones, and one that I think you really need to consider. I'll go ahead and give you the specs, but the more important part is actual usability. So the Flip 3 has a 1.9-inch Super AMOLED display on the cover with a resolution of 260 by 512 and 302 pixels per inch. The display looks great. It's larger than the previous model. It's able to show you notifications. There are a few widgets, and you can also use it as a preview display for selfies. The Fold 3 has a 120 Hz 6.2-inch dynamic AMOLED display with a resolution of 2268 by 832, 387 pixels per inch, and 120 Hz adaptive refresh rate. And this display looks absolutely fantastic. It's very bright, it's crisp, and the image quality is excellent. What's important here is how these displays impact your everyday use. So the Fold is completely usable when it's closed. You can do anything from look at notifications, you can browse the web, you can see and respond to texts and emails, you can watch videos, basically anything that you need to do. Now, some people have complained about it being a little narrow. I happen to really like it because it makes it easier for me to use it with one hand. And I'll get back to the idea of a wider cover display on the Fold in just a bit. The thing about using the Flip is that the cover screen isn't as functional as I would want it to be. And short of seeing notifications, I have to open the phone for everything that I want to do. This isn't a complaint about this phone, it's simply the reality. For a lot of users who aren't as old as I am, the baseline is a non-flip phone, and they're used to just picking up their device and starting to use it. They don't remember the transition from the older style flip phones to the more common current design. So I just want to make sure that you're comfortable with the idea of having to open your phone every time you pick it up to do anything, because that's what you're going to be doing. And the benefit you get is to have this big and beautiful display with you all the time with such a ridiculously small form factor when closed. Now let's get to the main displays, and then I'll address the idea of a wider cover screen on the Fold. So starting out with the Flip, we're getting a beautiful 6.7-inch dynamic AMOLED display with a resolution of 2640 by 1080 and 425 pixels per inch. If you're worried about the quality of the folding display, don't. Samsung absolutely crushed it, and in addition to it being a more durable display than on previous models, the image quality is outstanding. It's also an adaptive 120 Hz display, meaning that the Flip will automatically up the refresh rate to 120 Hz for situations that would offer a more fluid and smoother user experience. And then it will also be able to lower the refresh rate if you're doing something like reading a static page, and that helps conserve battery life. Moving on to the Fold, I said this in my detailed review, but when you open the display up for the first time, you won't be able to contain your smile. Like, I had my concerns because I thought, well, it has to fold. Like, how good could it actually be? Well, it could be really good. It absolutely transforms your experience from feeling like you're using a phone to using a tablet. You can see so much more, images and videos are bigger, you don't need to scroll as much, and it's definitely easier to multitask on. This is probably my favorite display on any phone at this point, and I notice myself enjoying it, so that newness hasn't worn off. Now, going back to making the cover display wider, I think that it would present some serious ergonomic obstacles. So in a regular phone, of course, it makes sense. We want it to be wider because it's thinner. But picture having to hold the thickness of two wide phones back to back, plus all that added weight. In my opinion, Samsung struck a good balance here by providing us with full functionality on the cover screen and then an outstanding user experience with the main display. Now, a lot of people also have questions about the crease. So let me just say, yes, you could see it on both. Yes, you can feel it. And no, it hasn't been an issue for me. I mean, we're getting two phones here that can fold in half, so I can live with the crease. In how I use these, I run across it more on the flip because the crease is horizontal. Whereas with the fold, it's usually vertical and it's in an area that neither of my thumbs really touch. Now, one more advantage to the fold is that you can use an S Pen to take notes, to draw, and to mark up documents, which is something that's not available on the flip. Now, I chose not to get one, and if you want to see why, I'll link to my more detailed video at the end of this one. Now let's talk about the cameras, because again, there are some differences here, and choosing the better option gets a little tricky depending on what you prioritize. And if you've gotten value from this video so far, give it a thumbs up and then hit that subscribe button. So right off the bat, let's clear up the fact that the Flip and the Fold don't have the best camera system on a Samsung phone. That title, at least for now, belongs to the S21 Ultra. The rear-facing camera module on the Flip has a wide 12-megapixel f1.8 camera, dual pixel autofocus with subject tracking, up to 10x digital zoom, and then OIS or optical image stabilization to keep your photos sharp and your video steady. There's also a 12-megapixel ultra-wide f2.2 for when you want to capture more of the scene, or if you're shooting in a really tight space. On the Fold, the rear-facing camera module consists of three 12-megapixel cameras. The first is a wide-angle f1.8 with dual pixel autofocus and OIS. The next is an ultra-wide f2.2, and then finally we get a telephoto f2.4, which again has dual pixel autofocus and OIS. The telephoto camera gives us 2x optical zoom, which means there's no loss in image quality, and then 10x digital zoom, which is what we have on the Flip, and that does come with a progressive loss in quality the more you zoom in. So if we're comparing rear-facing camera modules, I'm going to give the edge to the Fold. When we look at the front-facing cameras, the Flip has a 10-megapixel f2.4 camera, which is plenty good for video calls and selfies. The Fold also has a 10-megapixel selfie camera on the cover with a slightly wider aperture, and this camera works great when the phone is closed. When it's open, there's a 4-megapixel f1.8 under display camera, and this is where things get a little tricky. On the Flip, if you have it open or in flex mode, which means that it's laying flat on the surface and then the top half is sort of angled up, you get to use the 10-megapixel front-facing camera for things like video calls. On the Fold, if you have it open because you want the larger display, you have to use the 4-megapixel camera, which isn't that great. You can also see this camera through the display, which isn't really something that bothers me in real life. When we look at performance, both phones are powered by the Snapdragon 888 chip, which has plenty of processing power for any apps that I try to run, for all the multitasking that I did. And by the way, gaming on the Fold is wow. Wait till I show you. I'll get to multitasking in just a second, but one difference that I wanted to point out is that the Flip comes with 8 gigs of RAM and the Fold comes with 12. This isn't something that I noticed impacting my user experience so far, but it would make sense that the Fold can handle demanding multi-app use cases better. All right, so let's get to multitasking, where there is one advantage to the Fold that I expected and then another one that I didn't. If you're looking to use multiple apps at once, You can do that on the Flip with 2 apps side by side or stacked, depending on which orientation works best for you. But the Fold has so much more real estate to work with that it's not really a fair fight. It's kind of like comparing a small tablet to a phone. When you have 2 apps open, they each get a lot more room. And again, you can have them stacked or side by side. You can even have 3 apps open and tiled, and then a 4th one open in a pop-up window. And I know this is a lot, but I just wanted to show you what's possible. And this was the advantage that I was expecting it to have because it's obviously bigger. What I didn't expect was for DeX to only be available on the Fold. Now, this may not matter to every user, but DeX basically lets you use your phone as a laptop or computer replacement by providing a more robust desktop-like operating system. You can use the Fold as the display or even connect an external display, keyboard, and mouse, and then work with a user interface that has a desktop, a taskbar, the ability to work with multiple windows, and really put the power of the Snapdragon 888 to use. This is also available on my S21 Plus, so I was a little surprised to see that it was missing from the Flip. Again, it's not going to matter to every user, but I wanted to point it out. Moving on to biometric authentication, both phones offer face recognition and a fingerprint sensor, so you always have the option to use the one that best fits your needs. Now, I want to quickly discuss battery and charging and then get to gaming, which was absurdly fun. So the Flip comes with a relatively small 3300 mAh battery versus the 33% larger 4400 mAh one on the Fold. Now, this is a significant difference and is something that I notice on a daily basis. When it comes to charging, again, the Fold comes out ahead with 25 watts versus 15 watts for wired charging, and unfortunately both come with 10 watts wireless charging. Okay, so now let's get to gaming, which was awesome, and then we'll talk about who should get which phone. So gaming on the Flip is very good. We're getting a beautiful 120 Hz display, it's plenty wide, the Snapdragon 888 and the 8 gigs of RAM work great, and the overall gameplay is smooth and enjoyable. But once you start gaming on the Fold, there's really no going back. So first of all, it's like the perfect size where you don't feel like you're holding a large tablet, but the display is noticeably larger than a phone. Next, I already mentioned how amazing this 7.6-inch 120 Hz dynamic AMOLED display is. And playing the same games that I did on the Flip had a completely different feel to it. The entire experience was so much more immersive, and there's no question that it's the clear winner in this category. Now, on top of that, I also connected my Xbox controller and then played some games using the Xbox Game Pass app, and that worked great for me. So if you ever see me stuck at an airport, I'll probably be using this setup. Okay, so who is the Fold right for and who should get the Flip? First, let's talk about the price because there's a significant difference here. In the US, before trade-ins, which is definitely something that you should take a look at, the Fold starts at $1,800 and the Flip starts at $1,000. Both phones are rated as IPX8, so they're waterproof in up to 1.5 meters of fresh water for up to 30 minutes, and neither is dust resistant. So there isn't a difference there, but the lack of dust resistance is something that you need to keep in mind. The Fold is the right choice for you if you're a power user who wants more RAM, if you want to have a tablet with you without bringing a tablet with you, if you multitask a lot, if you want an amazing mobile gaming experience. It's also a great option if you want S Pen support, better battery life, and a more usable outer display. The biggest downsides with the Fold, at least for me, are the thickness and the weight. The Flip is a great option if you want a fun folding phone, which is smaller, lighter, and more portable. It's more affordable, and it works great in flex mode. Keep in mind that the battery life isn't great and that the external display lacks functionality. Remember that I have links in the description to all the products I talked about. Hopefully this video was helpful. Click on my face to subscribe and then watch this more detailed review of the Fold 3. You know what I always say? Buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon.